What I find interesting, so Matt Ridley's got this thing which is about two ideas having sex. You know that? Have you? I love that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about.
He's written The Red Queen. He's written The Rational Optimist. He's written Evolutionary Ideas.
Yeah.
He's written that. My friend Sam Tatum. He's written what is it? How innovation works or how.
I think there's two ideas having sex right now. Which is
the combinatorial genetics. Yeah.
But as in the profusion or the propulsion or the increase, I should say. Proliferation, there you go, thank you. In wearable tech, Whoops, is basically having sex with alcohol-free beer. Because what's happening is...
Go on, hit me with this.
Well, basically what's happening is...
I hadn't connected those two.
Well, yeah, so the fact that people are now, due to podcasts like Chris's, like Stephen Bartlett's, wearing wearable tech, they are realising now, and they are tracking how much... Even 2 beers is completely fucking their sleep. So they're now not looking to have beers.
This is really interesting.
And then obviously Lucky Saint, I'll pick that as a brand, for example.
That kind of was the chapel down in terms of opening up the market, wasn't it?
Yeah, Lucky Saint, yeah.
Lucky Saint,
so what they've done is so these ideas are not meaning to have sex with each other, but they are, right? And then what I mean by that is then Lucky.
Well, you also have the huge reduction in alcohol. I mean, Gen Z doesn't drink much and doesn't have much sex. That's the weird things about Gen Z.
Yes, that's another kind of ancillary part to this, I think. But then what Lucky Saint are doing is, so we solve this problem, which means you get more sleep by wearing, when you track your sleep, you have 2 Lucky Saints instead of 2 pints, you sleep better, you train better, right? Yeah. Lucky Saint have then realised with their marketing is, okay, let's not try and be a beer, let's slide into this lifestyle. So they have run clubs. So they're
by the way,
they're a beer brand that thinks like
no one will ever make a success of alcohol-free wine, in my opinion. And I always intrinsically think that a lot of people actually prefer beer to wine, but pretend to prefer wine for reasons of looking sophisticated, or because in a restaurant it's served to you in a big bottle which everybody shares, so you might as well tuck in. But I've always had this hunch that 30% of the population, particularly the male population, but not exclusively, often end up drinking wine in circumstances where, left to their own taste buds, they'd be drinking beer. And I think it's proven now that you can get people enthusiastic about alcohol-free beers. But I'd be interested to see. I'd be surprised to see alcohol-free wine making a success.
I know a guy who's got a brand. I think it could. It's more the way you'd work.
I'd be happy to be proved wrong.
So I think where it works again is that middle of the road. So he's actually called it Wednesday Domain, which is you want. So he basically says on Wednesday, you want to crack open a bottle of wine.
Got it.
But so he's owning that one day of the week. Thursday you'll go out for fucking
because Thursday's a new Friday.
Friday, blah blah blah. Yeah. I think it could work there, but that goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, the middle of the road. There'll be people who may have 1 or 2 glasses of this.
I was in Soho last Thursday. It was like fucking Hogarth. It was like
Where were you
total mayhem. Well, I was riding through it in a taxi mostly because I'd met some people at a restaurant there.
Where did you go?
Manzi's, which was very, very good. It's owned by the people who own the Wolsey.
Oh, nice.
And it was really, really good. I was very impressed, actually. And there I had a vegetarian main course, interestingly.
What did you have?
It was a kind of nest of things. It was kind of vegetables, kind of tempura vegetables with a a really fantastic thing. But it was complete, it was... it was kind of drunken mayhem on a Thursday. Friday, I imagine, is now quite quiet, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole working from home thing.
What are some of your favourites? So back just closing that loop. So I think whether they're meant to or not, I think whether they're having sex or not.
Booze really does fuck with your sleep.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't wear those Whoops.
No.
I go through periods where I don't drink, and then when I get absolutely hammered most days, it's like I'm quite extreme, but that's how I work.
There's an argument that that's actually a better way to be, that actually giving your liver a rest. In other words, also, if you have long periods where you don't drink, it's much harder to develop a dependency.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
So there is an argument that's what we called it 3 total. We never got it off the ground. It was our branding idea, which was the idea that people should be 3 total, which is you don't drink for 3 days in a row every week.
Yeah.
It's much easier than counting units. And also, for obvious reasons, it's much more practical because...
Well, that's basically what I do. When I'm drinking, I'll take
when you drink,
3
you
days
drink a
off,
lot,
and then I like it. But I also like periods. But I think those two completely different industries are helping each other out massively. What if you could have like 2 food ideas to have sex? That's quite a weird way of saying it. Or like two.
That's a great question.
2 ideas.
You've got to be careful because the general idea of fusion runs up against a mental thing called the jack of all trades heuristic.
Right.
Which is, if you just do Malaysian food, you're going to do pretty good Malaysian food. If you do like Malaysian Mexican fusion, people tend to assume that you're a not very good Mexican restaurant combined with a not very good Malaysian restaurant.
Yeah.
So you've got to be very careful. But in ideas having sex, okay, in food...
Or 2 opposing things that could help each other out, like Lucky Saint and Whoop, essentially kind of having an affair, maybe not having sex.
Yeah, because actually technology, and this is where the adjacent possible comes in, technology is often dependent for its adoption on something else. So I made this point, which I've never heard made before, but I think it's worth making, which is that you couldn't really have had the growth in the railways in Britain in the 1850s if you hadn't had the penny post being invented in 1840. Because you can't just turn up at someone's house 70 miles away and say, "Hi, I'm here to stay for 3 days." If you hadn't had the invention of the post so people could actually make arrangements with each other economically, then the railways might not have worked. Now, maybe that's bollocks. Someone will tell me, no, we had... No, but fundamentally, quite often you need one thing to be invented and then adopted for another thing to actually come of age. It's rather like we asked the question, why is it the wheeled suit? They put wheels on suitcases after they'd put a man on the moon. One of them seems comparatively simple. The other one is obviously unbelievably complicated engineering endeavor. Why did nobody think of putting wheels on suitcases before 1975 or whatever? Well, actually, it turns out that things like skateboarding led to huge improvements in inline wheel technology, which just made the whole thing much, much easier to do.
Yeah.
And obviously the electric car is contingent on battery improvements that were made for mobile phones.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ideas having sex. What would be a really... Okay, one thing I think... Okay, this is a really weird theory, okay, and it's probably not true. But my theory is that Elon Musk's grand plan is to combine Starlink with electric vehicles, with solar panels, with battery storage, okay, to enable people to live off the grid. And you therefore solve the world's housing crisis because once Tesla produces a motorhome, the Tesla Winnebago, right? You don't need to worry about buying a house in London. You can just go and live in one of those. Mm-hmm. And you'll need a base. Now, you'll need a big shed somewhere outside the M25 where you keep all your shit, right? But you can go and buy, 15 acres of woodland for like 30 or 40,000 pounds, not far from a railway station. You keep an electric bicycle. You charge that thing up with a bit of solar and the occasional trip to the BP Pulse charging station, right? You can run your Nespresso machine, your oven, your microwave, your big telly off that 200 kilowatt hour battery that's underneath your Tesla Winnebago. You've got your Starlink thing connecting you to the phone network. All he needs to do is produce a sort of microwave toilet that deals with your waste and your effluvium. And actually, you could tank the world's property market by allowing people to go nomadic. That's my weird theory, that actually, a bit like, you remember in Goldfinger, the guy had that plan, which is buy up a lot of gold and then nuke Fort Knox. So all of the world's gold, 90% of the world's gold would be radioactive for 70 years. So his gold would now become 10 times as valuable. That was Goldfinger's plan, in the film anyway. Can't remember what the plan was in the book. Now, my secret dream is that Elon Musk has actually done a massive short on the world's residential and commercial property market, okay, on the basis that once you're on wheels, you don't need planning permission. So you can buy your little woodland with your little road going in, and you can go and park your Winnebago there, and you can go and live there for a fraction of the cost that you're spending on rent for some shitty bedsit in Clapham.
Yes, yeah. No, I think it's almost like the extreme version of what
So motorhomes and electric vehicles strike me as really, really interesting
Yes.
as an idea as having sex, because the fully electrified motorhome is a serious, you don't have all that problem with generators and all that shit.
Final thing, mate. 'Cause I know you got your.
So, okay, I'm just trying to think about. No, don't worry, I've got a bit of time. I'm just thinking about ideas having sex. I'm wondering, in a food context, is there something that's fundamentally missing?
So this is not necessarily missing, but whilst you think, there's a restaurant called, not Jolene, Angelina, which I highly recommend going to in Dalston, which is a fusion that should not work, but works fucking charm. Italian and Japanese. So they will do the most fresh Italian.
There's a restaurant in Westerham called Bissy's Bites, which is Jamaican Italian.
Wow.
And as she describes it, he's Italian, his wife is Jamaican.
So what would they have on that? That's a wild
And
fusion.
actually, she said he's the culinary genius. I just add the requisite amount of spice. But she's doing herself an injustice because the various patties and things are really fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's. I think where it gets interesting in terms of having sex is how, or what's had sex already, is technology and food. So self-service is an example where
there's something missing. Indian food, the greatest food in the history of the world.
Yeah, Jim Carner got 2 stars now.
It's got 2 stars. So fuck, I won't be able to get in now. But I used to go there. The set lunch
Yeah, I know
was
you
an
told me
absolute
something. I
bargain.
need to get there. Yeah.
There's something with Indian food now, obviously at the high end, Dishoom's done it in scaling it. There's something that has to be possible in terms of scaling Indian food.
Didn't they have Bombay Bicycle Club, which was the version of that?
Well, that only got to about 3 or 4 outlets, didn't it? I thought.
Yeah, I don't know.
Weirdly, I went to something called Bombay Bicycle Club in the United States once, but I don't know whether that was whether they'd bought the brand or something.
But do you think deep down psychologically the story and almost that consistency of the promise? You know what we were talking about earlier is we're so used to our local curry house, a bit like I know.
Like
we're so used to our
you
local
don't want
bakery
it to become part of a chain.
Yeah, whereas that's the genius of Dishoom. But what Dishoom
I
do?
actually love Indian food from the fact that you could be anywhere in Britain, or indeed in Fuerteventura, as I was last week, and have a fantastic Indian meal. I think, the fact that you're only,
Lisbon,
with a bit
Lisbon,
of
there's loads
TripAdvisor or whatever, the fact that you're only 8 miles away from somewhere fantastic is just joyous.
Yeah, I think.
So let's abandon that then and say that it's a fundamentally localized artisan food. Okay, I'll keep thinking about this because it's a really interesting question. But also, are there new technologies? So I think the business of... so I was talking to some people at Berkeley who are food scientists, and they say that actually a lot of the work in preserving food was done by NASA. Okay. In other words, space meals, and a lot of it's been done by the military, which is MRE, meals ready to eat, which is the military category. And you can actually have really, really good food that's preserved with a really long shelf life. And it tastes delicious. The problem you face is the problem you face with frozen food with Iceland, which is because it's more efficient, it's cheaper, and therefore people think it's down market.
I've got an idea that 2 things that could have sex. This is this Canadian.
So long preserved, very high quality food is a really interesting.
So that's person 1 or idea 1. Idea 2, and this is this Canadian couple I met out in Costa Rica. They actually own one of these stores. Is why frozen food in the UK has such a stigma with it, right?
Yes.
Whereas...
Not in France. Picard in France, which you can also buy on Ocado, is the French Marks and Spencer's ready meal. It's a traiteur, but it's all frozen.
Yes.
And the French... So my French colleagues, when I told them they could buy Picard food on Ocado, they practically all hugged me. Because it's like Brits missing Marks and Spencer's, okay? And so, but it's frozen. And the French, surgelé, frozen food doesn't have the stigma. And it does in the UK. And it's a huge tragedy because in many ways you preserve the nutrients better.
This is it. Jamie Oliver has badgered on like frozen fruit is better.
Yeah.
The actual quality is better and it's flash frozen. So two ideas. I'm just thinking, why is someone not creating...
The Ivy does that thing, doesn't it? Which is the frozen fruit with hot white chocolate sauce poured over it.
Yes.
Which is one of their sort of staple puddings, which is just magically good because it's all the yin and the yang thing going on.
Yes.
But no, I'm a big fan of frozen fruit, and I think that there are a lot of foods which freeze really, really well, and I think we've vilified the freezer.
Well, Iceland in terms of Iceland, we've got a chain at the bottom not raising the floor.
You've got Cook, of course, which is an interesting chain. That's frozen food.
Yeah,
that's a Kent-based company again.
That's more like that's more like frozen ready meals. The idea I think is almost you have like you walk into like a Planet Organic and a Whole Foods. So you have the premiumization, almost like a frozen Trader Joe's or a frozen Planet Organic. No food waste, probably cheaper for the consumer.
Yeah.
It's like
supply chain, no problems there.
That would absolutely win. I don't know why that's not in the UK, but I think we're.
So we actually worked with a company called Wrap, and one of the things we did was we actually had loaves of bread where the packaging was half eat me, freeze me.
Oh.
Because nobody knows, particularly young people, don't have a clue. One of the things you've got to realise is that, and I'll defend the advertising industry and the importance of it in that way, is that there's extraordinary widespread ignorance about all kinds of things, okay?
Yeah.
And so I remember someone with a degree getting really pissed off because someone came and stayed the night with them and without asking permission charged their mobile phone off the plug. Okay, now that's like 0.5p, okay, right? There are a lot of people who don't know that heat uses a lot of electricity and lights doesn't use very much. So they'll go around turning off lights absolutely furiously, but then they'll leave a 3-bar electric heater on, okay? Or they don't worry about the oven or the kettle or any of that stuff. People haven't got a clue about this stuff. And, you have problems like things like heat pumps where it doesn't seem to make sense that it's 5 times more efficient to heat a home with a heat pump than it is with a boiler. And so you get this, and nobody knows what food freezes, genuinely. It's a tragedy that when you buy a freezer, there isn't a bloody book in it which says this is the stuff you can freeze. And actually, it's a extraordinary way of minimizing food waste. Probably we're also too paranoid because you have this freeze on day of purchase, best before nonsense, which is actually... Nobody knows the difference between a best before date and a use by date, by the way, and they're completely different. Best before date on a can.
Yeah, that's
one of the things I tried to propose. I had a very good friend who said you could reduce food waste. Who was it? A colleague of mine, by just putting the day of the week on the use by date. Used by Wednesday, and people would look at it on Friday and go, yeah, that's okay.
Your friend, that restaurant...
I don't know the fucking day. I don't know what today is. Is it the 6th of March? Is it the 4th? 4th of March. Okay, right.
You're going to have to go.
No. I've got 2 more minutes. I'll be fine. And then you have the thing where what it should say is best before... It should actually say best before June 24, right? Because if you say best before June the 24th, that suggests a degree of specificity where somehow on June the 25th the thing becomes unedible and will give you botulism. But you'd be fine in July, fine in August,